debut episode of Reaching Abundance, you'll hear from Allison Baggerly. She's the powerhouse mom behind Inspired Budget, who's also published a book, Money Made Easy. In this episode, we dive into boundaries, choice, finding support, mental health, and even an exercise on evaluating where to show up when it comes to outside commitments like conferences, networking events, and speaking opportunities. Allison's an extrovert, while I'm an introvert. So listen in for some tips around managing your own business based on your personality as well. Allison, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I want to just launch straight into the interview here and ask you about some potential defaults or like automatic actions that you have when you're maybe in a funk or in a place where you're not feeling so abundant.
Well, Virginia, thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to be here. I have definitely noticed just my own initial reactions to being in a funk or not feeling like I am very abundant is that I choose to not work. I will find any and every excuse to not make it into my home office, to not accomplish my tasks. I will want to go lay on the sofa and just binge Netflix or take a nap. And I just don't want to be in a space where I'm working on my business when I don't feel abundant in my business, which feels very backwards because how am I going to be abundant and feel that way in my business if I'm avoiding it and not working on it? But that is definitely my default reaction.
Yeah. So then on the flip side, I would take that means when you are feeling abundant, then there's like a level of energy there that's exciting to walk into the home office and take care of business.
Most of the time, yes. I mean, I'm not going to lie and say that I'm excited to go to work and work. And here's the thing. I love my job. Like I want that to be known. I do. I feel like I'm definitely doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm in the position where I've always dreamed I would be. I remember last week, I was able to go read for 20 minutes to my son's class and then come back home. And I thought, oh my gosh, like this is what I prayed for 5 years ago. This is what I was dreaming about. And here I am. And there are still times whenever I take it for granted or I'm not in a great headspace. So do I wake up every day excited and eager to go to work? No. But when things are going well in my business, I am more excited to show up. And when things are struggling or when I am struggling mentally, even outside of the business, I do have to overcome some roadblocks and give myself a pep talk because no one else is going to force me to work.
Yeah.
I don't have a boss sitting there saying, you better show up. No, it's just me. I have to be my own boss.
Yeah, for sure. So then continue to share with us about what you do and also weave in some practices or tools or tips that you have that help you show up more abundantly when maybe you're not feeling it. Like, sure, have your pity party, lay on the couch, do something, give yourself some time, right? Especially if it's health or grief or you didn't sleep well or whatever, like there's some grace to be given there. But then when it's like, all right, girl, get up, let's go. We got some business to do. How do you get in the right mental space? How do you shift?
You know, I think that for so long, I just assumed, if I don't feel like working, I'm not going to work. And I am just going to lay here because that's what my body is telling me I need. And this is hard. So I am going to just lay here. And then I realized that, hey, I wasn't making any progress. And so these days, what I do is when I feel like that, and I can almost pinpoint sometimes when it's going to be. I know like days of the week where I tend to struggle more and then just times of the year and times of the month. And what I do is I have started my practice of every morning I have amazing privilege of being able to take my son to school every morning, which my parents weren't able to do for me. They were off working, and I see that as a privilege. I take my son to school every morning. I drop him off. I come home. I spend some time with my older one before he goes off to school, and I drink my cup of coffee. I sit in my pink chair, which is right behind me. My cat's sitting in it right now. And every morning I listen to a certain playlist, and I spend time. First, I write in my yearly journal where I just write very quickly 2 to 3 lines of what my day yesterday was like. And then I spend time in a devotional and a journal. And I really try to do that every single day for the first 10 or 15 minutes. And I have found that when I'm doing that, I show up differently than the days where I'm like, oh, I have so much on my plate. Let me just skip that today. Those days, I show up differently in my business. So that's one thing that I have added into my daily routine that I try to make a non-negotiable. I'm not going to say I do it every day, but I really try Monday through Friday to make that a non-negotiable in my day. So that's one of the routines and practices that I've added in.
Yeah, I love that. There is massive power in journaling. And I agree. Like when I do it, I am able to show up better, stronger, more clear, less distracted. A lot of those things come into the picture.
And sometimes if I know what's bothering me, if I am in a funk, I mean, sometimes I just journal and I'm not in a funk, and that's fine. It's really good when I am not in the best headspace, and I'll even start Googling journal prompts for entrepreneurs. And I've have it saved as a bookmark on my phone. I have a bookmark of like 100 journal prompts for entrepreneurs, because it's in those times whenever I realize I'm in a funk and I need a journal. The last thing I want to do is go searching down a rabbit hole for what I should journal about if I'm not even sure. So I will go back to this bookmarked on my mobile app, on my phone, and I will look it up and I'll say, okay, what's really speaking to me? Let me just dedicate 10 minutes, like 5 minutes, just 10 minutes max is what I do. 5 minutes. If I can just journal for 5 minutes about this and just get it out on paper, I always feel better.
And do you find that a lot of times what you're writing about is a business thing, or is it a personal thing, or is it like sometimes one or the other? Like what do you find?
I find that a lot of the things I'm writing about or that put me in a place where I feel like I'm not being the best mom or business owner or wife or showing up as my best self is because I have set these expectations for myself that usually make no sense. Or I have set expectations. I have not met a list of self-imposed expectations that have been set by me. And so a lot of times I have to reevaluate those expectations and be willing to move them and be willing to pivot and adjust those expectations. That's a lot of times what it comes back to is, what did I choose to put on my own shoulders that I have to say, you know what, this isn't worth it anymore if it's not going as planned. When you're an entrepreneur, we set our own metrics and goals and things we want to hit. And when we work at a traditional job, those are usually set for us. And anytime I struggle with this, my husband's like, you're the one who decided that you had to do X, Y, and Z. And like, you're the one that can modify that requirement. I'm like, I know. He's like, you should talk to your boss about that. That's what he always says.
Well, so this is a super solid point, because I think so many of us, whether it is like a monetary goal or, the team size or how often we post on social media or like whatever it is, we live by these imaginary metrics that we should hit. And I think it takes a very aware person to sit back and say, hold on, who made this rule? Excuse me. like, why do I need to follow this? And even better that your partner is able to help you highlight that. Mm-hmm. I think that's very, very supportive and very useful of him in that way. So yes. Talk to me more about what are some imaginary metrics or goals or expectations that you've had that you've done away with?
Oh my gosh. Well, I wouldn't say they're imaginary. I would more say that, I've had revenue goals that I haven't hit before. I'm going to be honest with you. Every single year I set a revenue goal and I never hit it because I realized halfway through, this was probably not realistic.
This was really ambitious.
It was ambitious, and I'm very much a dreamer. I have big, amazing dreams. Mm-hmm. And it can be really sad to have all of these dreams that you feel like you're never going to reach. And when I start realizing that, because dreaming excites me and it energizes me. But when I have been working towards something and I realize, whoa, this dream might not be reachable or achievable in this specific time frame I have allotted for myself, that's when I start to feel down and I start to think, am I doing what I need to be doing? Should I really be a business owner? Am I good enough at this? And that's when I start really doubting myself. And some of those goals or those dreams might be in terms of revenue. It might be in terms of the amount of people I am helping or reaching, the amount of times I am showing up the way I want to show up, the amount of partnerships that I make along with others. And regardless of what it is, I have to look back and say, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen if I don't reach this goal or I don't reach this thing, this metric that I've set? I'm still able to work truly part-time. I only work about 20 to 25 hours a week. And for me, I have to ask myself, is that time trade-off worth reaching that goal or that dream, that revenue goal, the extra $100,000 or $200,000? Is it? And I have to look back and say, no, for me, where do my values lie? I want to be able to work for a couple of hours during the day while my kids are at school, and I want to be able to shut it off at night and not have to work anymore. And I want to have that flexibility and freedom. So not only is it being willing to adjust those expectations that I've set for myself, but being willing to say, just because I didn't meet that doesn't mean I didn't gain so many things in other areas of my life.
Yeah. So balancing the visionary piece that's required basically to be a business owner, but then the drive and the action steps that follow that vision to be able to make it happen. But then also realizing is this right for me? Is it right for me now in this season? Maybe I can hit that revenue goal in 2 years instead of in 1 year. But I agree. I think, and this is the perfect time for this, where everybody sets goals, or not everybody. Some people are very anti-goal, but people set goals and start to put things into motion. And then I think a lot of people fall off because of the disappointment that you're talking about of, this feels impossible, or this was a wild and crazy dream and it was a bit too ambitious or whatever. But I definitely think I'm somebody that dreams big like you. And I will set those goals and I will work really, really hard towards them. And it is sometimes disappointing, but I also feel it's important that we all notice, just because you didn't hit it or accomplish it or really truly get there, halfway there is better than nothing, and
oh my gosh,
a big, probably even still a stretch from where you were. So if you weren't pursuing that goal, would you have gotten halfway? Maybe, maybe not. Mm-hmm. So I think they're still helpful, but we have to really adjust how we look at them.
You know what I also have to remind myself is that as a business owner, my business isn't everything. And so when I set these big, amazing goals, or I have these wonderful visions for what I want it to be, I have to really ask myself, does that vision fall in line with the vision I have for my family? Because if my vision I have for my business does not fall in line with what I have for my family, then it's not a vision worth setting. It's not something worth going after for me. So it's very easy for me to say yes to a lot of things and take on new things and say, I want to do this and this and this, because I have, like, it could be amazing and great. And I have to sometimes halfway through the year or whenever it happens, pull back and say, hold on. If this is taking away from what I have dreamed of for what I want my family life to be like and my home life to be like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And I have to remind myself, as someone who, I love what I do, I've created this own business from scratch, like from the ground up. Who would have thought? Like, I just dreamt up a job. Like, okay, here I am now. Like, I just created my own job. I have to remember that my business Inspired Budget isn't all of me. Even though it takes so much of my attention and my energy and my creative energy, and I love pouring into it, I have to remember that it's not all of me. And when I do that, it makes it easier for me to say, like, okay, it's okay if I didn't do X, Y, and Z. And it's okay if I scale back and I create a business that isn't multiple 7 figures and that I don't have a team of 25 people. That's totally okay.
Have you ever pictured yourself having your own show? Maybe it's time. This show is edited and produced by podcastabundance.com. And if you like what we're doing, we can do it for your business too. I'm Virginia Elder, and I've been helping entrepreneurs start podcasts to market their business since 2019. I coach you through branding, structuring your episodes, workflow, and recording your podcast. Then my team and I professionally edit your audio and video so that you don't have to. We'll even write your episode descriptions and titles so that when potential customers turn to Google, your show appears in their search results. Establish authority in your niche, expand your reach, and create a library of helpful content for potential and current clients, all with your own podcast. I'm here to hold your hand and make podcasting the exciting, up-leveling experience it should be, skirting you past the tech and software struggles too. Take the first step by booking a call with me using the link in the show notes or by visiting podcastabundance.com. Now, on to the rest of the show. Yeah. And if that is someone's vision, fine, power, but it doesn't have to be all of our vision. I think so often we're chasing somebody else's vision potentially just because we read it or saw them on stage or whatever it is. We adopt this persona or idea that, oh, I should be doing that. And, even just in this past year, like on social media, I saw so much hate for the word should, and everybody's trying to remove that from their vocabulary. There's still spaces where I use it and I'm like, no, I should be doing that. Like, I'm not going to back down. Like, that is a thing I should be doing, and I want to do it and I will do it. But we have to be careful about that language as well. Mm-hmm. So you started to talk a little bit about your business. I would love to hear more about it. And I know you help create abundance in people's lives through your business. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Oh, well, thank you. That means a lot. My business is called Inspired Budget, and I help women learn how to write a budget, pay off debt, and save money, and basically live a life they love on a budget. And it's a total shock to everyone that I have a business about this because I love spending money. And when I was in my 20s, my husband and I found ourselves unexpectedly pregnant. We couldn't afford daycare payments. And that's when we sat down and had our first money conversation ever, which was that when we totaled up and found out we had over $111,000 of debt. And so during that process, through the process of budgeting and paying off debt, I became incredibly passionate about just the freedom that my budget gave me and the control that I felt like I never had with money. And once we became debt free, I realized, oh my gosh, this passion isn't going away. So I was a teacher at the time. I took my skill set of teaching and my passion for personal finance, and I put them together to create Inspired Budget.
Yay, I love that. So, and I'm not sure how much you realize, but our stories are extremely similar. We were we were having our second kid when everything hit the fan. And yes, we had been a little bit irresponsible with our spending, and more so because my side of the family was like absolutely imploding. And so I was supporting my mom through her divorce, and that put us in a really bad financial position. And I think that that's super normal. All of us entrepreneurs generally create a business out of our own pain. So initially I started out financial coaching because hearing financial podcasts really was a big piece for me, and it really saved us. So I launched my own show, and then now everything has pivoted and shifted. And so that's why I do manage personal finance shows now, because I know for a fact that they help people. So talk to me about how podcasting has played a part in your business journey, and how, are you getting clients from different shows that you do? Or talk to me about how that's played a piece into this abundance puzzle for you.
Of course. So this probably isn't going to be what you expected. So I very much am an extrovert. I started Inspired Budget in 2017 when I was a full-time teacher. I had a goal of leaving teaching within 5 years. I did it within 2. So 2019, August, I am no longer teaching. I'm here in my lovely home office, and I start working as a business owner, as my own boss. And I did not have a podcast then. I had my website, Instagram following, and, different options and offers for people. I was not doing one-on-one coaching. And fast forward to 2020, and I realized just how lonely I was, because I felt like I was alone all the time in my home office. Whereas before I was a teacher, I was constantly around people, 23 or 24 students, and then also the other teachers. And I had that extrovert side of me just filled up to the brim every single day. And so here I am, my home office, and I'm feeling very lonely. I was in a funk. I'm in counseling, and I already struggle with depression and anxiety. And I realized I am missing human interaction. Like, I am missing having someone that I talk to every day other than my children and my husband. And so I decided to start a podcast because it would give me a way to fill me up and connect with others. And I was like, you know what? If people get something out of it, fine. I don't even care. I was not even doing it for my listeners, which I know is so awful, right? I was not even doing it for my listeners. I was like, I don't even care if anyone listens. If I just can have conversations with people and talk with people and be in a better space of with my mental health, that will serve its purpose. And it did. It served its purpose. Every other interview is a guest interview. Every other one is solo for me. But it allowed me to network and talk to people and be in a really healthy space just with my personality. And the bonus is that it has reached a lot of people, the podcast has, and it has helped others. And I've received amazing messages because it's helped people feel like, okay, they have an actionable step-by-step plan to help them manage their money better. Because I'm a teacher at heart, so I'm not going to just give you just ideas. I'm going to give you action steps in every single episode. So that's how it's really impacted my businesses. It's really impacted me just personally, be in a healthy space. And then it's helped me meet other people, connect with others. And also, whenever I wrote my book, Money Made Easy, it gave me an opportunity to share my book and my podcast by going on other people's podcasts. And then in return, I can have authors and podcasters on my podcast as well.
I love that. Okay, so you mentioned in there dealing with depression and being an extrovert. So those are two topics that I would love to like separate and unpack because business owners deal with those things. So I am an introvert. So I'm very, very happy being alone, quiet in my office. If I want some noise, I will happily play some music that I want to. And the workplace, I didn't know it at the time, but when I was full-time, the workplace overwhelmed me. And I would get in my car and drive home in silence. And I just thought like, man, I'm just a weirdo. Like, what kind of weirdo drives in silence, like a 45-minute drive home? How strange. In, my business owner journey, I have discovered, oh, well, that's because I'm an introvert and lots of busy places overwhelm me. So while I have lots of insight and advice on how an introvert might run a business, I would love to hear how you, as an extrovert, as someone alone in your home office every day, deals with that. Like, do you go to local networking events? Like, how do you get your extrovert fix? Yes, you mentioned the podcast, but what else?
That's a great question. I should go to local meetups and things like that.
Throwing it
My
out there.
issue is, yeah. Well, and that's something that I've always thought, I should do that. So many of them are in the evening though. And that's one of my hard boundaries is I only want maybe 2 to 3 evening commitments a month for me personally. And that'll change as my kids get older and they move out and everything. But I'm just in this season of motherhood right now where my kids are young. I think we have kids around the same ages. I have an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old.
Yep,
what do you have?
Exactly the same.
Yeah, I thought so. So I have an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old. I'm chauffeuring them all around. We're working on fractions. They require a lot more guidance than I thought they would at this age. And I want to be there. I want to be there for them. And that's very important to me. So I don't do as many networking events. Before COVID, I would go every single Friday to a coffee shop. And I've really just gotten out of the habit of that. I think part of it is I now have these nice 2 massive monitors on my computer. And the idea of working on a tiny laptop is just soul crushing. So that's also I did that to myself, but I do have a friend who also works from home. She lives in a different state and we talk on Marco Polo every single day. So she's almost like my built-in colleague, my built-in coworker. She has her own business. I have my own business. We talk back and forth every single weekday, a couple of times a day. And that allows me to feel like I have some sort of connection. I also have a contractor that works with me. I'm able to communicate with her, not as often as I would probably like, but as often as is necessary for her schedule. And that has been helpful for me. Is it perfect? No. Do I think I should have a way to get out my extrovertedness and be around others? Yes. Last year, I committed to going to 1 too many in-person conferences. And while I thrived and loved it, I also realized that it wasn't always beneficial for my business. It was beneficial for Allison, the person, and my personality, but it was not always beneficial for my business and it was not always beneficial for my family. So one thing I've committed to in 2024 is really limiting those and being very choosy over how I allocate my time to others versus my family while still fulfilling that desire to talk to others. And I will say that I have a group of friends that are also business owners in the personal finance space. And we meet every Monday for an hour via Zoom, which is also really helpful.
So business besties are super important, whether they're your friend on Marco Polo or your group that you're meeting each Monday. So I have that as well. And I hope that, anybody listening, if you don't have that, make an active effort to seek that out. Because even for an introvert or an extrovert, you're hearing right now that this is important. For me, it's like, okay, I got to show up to this meeting. But I genuinely love those people. And so I want to, but it's just like my own barriers kind of talk me out of it sometimes, or try to. But those meetings are so helpful to just hash out any kind of things that I'm thinking about or struggling with, or should I do this, or should I change my pricing, or should I, whatever. There's a million questions that we have running through our heads every day. And it gives us a sounding board, or like a board of directors that a high profile CEO would have that we don't have because we're in our home office, right? So I think that's super important. Talk to me about the depression piece and struggling with that, and how you move your business forward even through the rough moments.
Well, I want to preface this by saying I'm on antidepressants. So I do take antidepressants every single day. I have since I was 14 years old, with just little periods of time when I didn't. And my depression and anxiety really can halt my business. If I'm taking my medicine as I should, then I usually do not struggle. Just as a general rule, with my history and what I've noticed the patterns in myself. Are there times whenever I'm tempted to not take it, or I forget, or I decide, I don't want to live on this anymore. I don't want to have to rely on my happy pill. That's ridiculous. There are times when I decide, no, I don't want to be on antidepressants anymore. And I do okay for a little bit. And then eventually the chemical imbalance in my brain becomes imbalanced again. So there are times whenever I will need to completely stop working or really cut back for a period of time so that I can get myself out of the depression. I will say I have a therapist who I have been seeing for, 5 years now. I see her every single month, and that has helped me. I will also say that my husband, who does not struggle with depression, does not struggle with anxiety, is very much an even keel person, whereas I'm more of the roller coaster. I have my high highs and low lows type of person. He can also see in advance, almost like when I'm starting to fall into a depression moment. So I can see it. I can identify it in myself usually. And then my husband has been really good about almost spotting that as well, just because I'm very open with him about when I am depressed, what I'm depressed about, how I show up that way. Mm-hmm. So he can also spot it.
Yeah.
And there are times whenever I have my therapist and my husband saying, you've got to just pause. You have got to pause, and you are burned out in your business. You're not in a good space. And I have been forced to take leave, if you will, for my own mental health. And that's when it's really bad. But I will say that I have to listen to my body, and I have to listen to my thoughts. And I have learned specifically to really question my thoughts and ask, just because I feel a certain way or just because I think something is true doesn't make it true. And so I've done a lot of, I love Byron Katie, the work, and her book, Loving What Is. So I will ask myself, okay, is this thought really true? And a lot of times it's not, especially when I'm depressed. Yeah. It feels true. And then I've also had times where I go to my husband and he's read the book. He knows everything about it. And I'll go and I'll say, hey, I'm spiraling and I'm thinking something, and I just need your help talking through it. So that way I realize, is this true or is this not true? And he'll be like, okay, well, what is it? And he'll work with me to go through evidence of whether or not a thought I have is true or not true, so that I can manage my thoughts whenever I'm struggling.
Oh, super helpful. So even for anybody that does or doesn't struggle with depression, that whole piece right there is so useful, because 100% we think that our thoughts are the truth, right? And only until we turn around and question, wait a minute, like, where did I get this? Where is the evidence? Why do I believe that this is like the cold hard facts when it's literally something my brain made up? So, I have had to go through those exercises. So that's super useful to everyone. So you commented earlier about overcommitting to conferences. I experienced the same thing last year. And so for business owners, I think a lot of times we're looking ahead at the year, trying to evaluate where we should show up and why. Would you share some of your process to evaluating conferences or not, networking events or not, like wherever you're showing up? How do you decide that that's working or that you should show up there? Like, what's your frame of reference or process for deciding where to go, where to be, where to show?
I don't probably have like a step-by-step process for that. I really don't. Last year, I overcommitted on both the personal side and the business side. So I think that that's something that we think, well, I'm not going on a lot of business trips. Well, I also went on a lot of personal trips. So combined, it was a lot. And combined, it was a lot of me away from home, which, just like I've said before, in this season of my life, I don't want to be away from home. So I do have a conference that, to me, for my business and also just for my personal side, because I have so many friends that go, is a non-negotiable, and that's FinCon. For me, I want to go to FinCon every single year. I love it. It gives me opportunities in my business. It gives me opportunities to network and just my personal growth. It's very important to me. And then I tell myself, I'm going to take the rest of them on a case-by-case basis. I will not say yes and I will not say no. A lot of times I'm looking at it as what else is going on in my life during that time, during that conference. For instance, there's a conference in the summer. I have wanted to go to it every single summer, but I'm not willing to take away time from my family trips during the summer and my family time during the summer to attend that conference. It's just not worth it for me. So I also look on, like, in the month, what is going on, and do I feel like it's worth it? And I will say that a lot of conferences to me are only worth it because of the people I'm going to network with. So much of the information doesn't make it worth it to me. For me, it's the networking, it's the people, it's the connecting and building those relationships that may or may not have something eventually come out of it one day that's beneficial for the business. And networking, talking to people, that's my jam. That's my thing. I'm an extrovert. I could do that all day long. So I also have to consider that whenever I'm making those decisions. Like, I almost remove the actual, like, what is the conference about? I remove that from the equation.
That's really good advice. I haven't thought about that piece before. So I've thought about, are there potential clients there? Is this like a visibility play versus almost like networking, like visibility as in you're being featured as an expert in your field versus you're networking with people in very similar spaces, like potentially in your field of business. So other business owners just like you. And then, of course, the financial piece of it. How much is the conference? What's the travel? Where are we staying? What's the big ticket here? And, how is that getting funded, right? If it's a big ticket, but you also get 3 clients from that conference, well, then maybe it's worth it. So I tend to do the like financial analysis piece of that, but I hadn't thought about just completely removing the like content of the conference in my evaluation. That's pretty good. Because yeah, I felt overcommitted to conferences last year as well. And so there are only a few that I am going to this year, either because I'm speaking or hosting like a podcast recording table, or like there's a reason almost.
And I will say that I see conferences differently than speaking, like paid speaking. So paid speaking is also something different, something I enjoy doing, but I want to limit the amount of paid speaking I do that requires me to get on a plane and travel away from my family. Like, I mean, if anything, I hope this comes across as I'm trying to have very clear, strict boundaries to protect my family time at this stage in my life. And it's also different. So I don't even lump in paid speaking, paid travel with the conferences. Like I see those as two separate things. And my goal is to essentially limit both as much as is necessary. Now, if like an amazing company wanted me to come speak, they're paying me really well, and I have to travel, I'm going to say yes. And it makes it easier for me to say yes because my calendar is clear and I don't have all of these other things that I've committed myself to and overcommitted myself to. So it's almost like I leave my calendar open for those like really easy yes opportunities. And last year I did not do that. I left my calendar open for everything and anything. And I said yes. And I was really burned out and resentful by the end of it. And who do I have to be resentful at? Myself. I brought it all on. It's me. It's my fault. I don't have a higher up person saying you have to do these things. No, it was all my fault. Mm-hmm. So I said, I'm not going to feel like that next year. I'm going to be more mindful of it.
Yeah. So you sound like you're extremely in line with your values. And one of your big values is your family and your family time. How would you recommend someone rewind a little bit if they are realizing, holy cow, I've built this monster and I love this monster, but it is taking over my life and I need to rewind and get back to my values and decide how often I want to be available to my family, right? Just as an example, what would some steps be that somebody could take to like back out of this monster that they've created?
I would say to just sit down and create boundaries for yourself, rules, expectations, whatever you want to call them. The reason, and I will say, Virginia, the reason why I have such strong boundaries around family time versus work time is because for a period of my business, I did not have boundaries. So often we create boundaries instead of rules for ourselves because it was a hot mess before and we were like, I didn't like the way I felt. I didn't like that. Let's do something to make it different. And that's where I was. I was working full-time as a teacher. I was also trying to create this business and my home life fell apart. My husband and I are in therapy. I'm just totally checked out all the time. And I had this hustle because I said, I have to hustle. I see this light at the end of the tunnel where I can leave my teaching job. And in the process, I almost burned everything down to the ground. So I was very fortunate to the fact that I was able to leave my teaching job, which gave me, number one, the time to be able to not have to be doing two things at once, not having two essentially full-time jobs or 1.5 jobs on my plate. And then secondly, after I kind of just worked through that, I started creating boundaries around my time of when I'm going to work, which meant that I couldn't do certain things on social media. I wasn't going to be saying yes to all of these Instagram lives in the evening. Like, no, thank you. And that allowed me to really have these clear kind of just set of rules around what I am willing to do and what I'm not willing to do. It's harder in the summertime when my kids are out from school. I feel like oh my gosh, I have no idea when I'm supposed to work or when I'm not supposed to work because they're home all the time. Whereas in the school year, it's very nice. I'm like, okay, I have between 8:30 and 3 o'clock, and those are my working hours. And having that very strict time schedule has helped me say, okay, this is the amount of time you have. If you don't get it done in that time, like you don't get to just keep putting it off to Saturday and Sunday. No, that's not an option. If you don't get it done in that time, then you have too much on your plate. And we have to learn to scale back and take something off your plate or be willing to hire it out. And so for anyone who wants to kind of remove some of that, then I would say treat it like a freaking 9 to 5. You know, people who have a true 9 to 5, like I think about my husband, he does not bring work home. He goes to work, he works, he comes home, he's done with work. And he has those very clear hours. So give yourself hours. Give yourself hours where you shut the computer and you shut down work and you close the doors to your office, or you know, even if you don't have an office, you throw a sheet over your computer, you hide your computer, whatever it is, to give yourself that shutdown from work as much as you can. Does that mean that I'm not thinking about work all the time? No, I am. It is always in my mind because it's this monster I've created that I love so much. But I'm still, you know, it's become easier over time, I will say, to have that separation.
Okay, I love so many things that you said. And I'm over here cracking up because for Christmas this past year, I asked for like little mini like suction cup whiteboards that are actually for your shower. So you could have like a dry erase like whiteboard in your shower, because where do you have your best ideas? In the shower, in the kitchen, like wherever else. Not for some reason I walk in here and it's just like a void of like I don't know, the creativity goes, and it's so natural for me to just dive into client work or organization or like I'm doing work. But the ahas and the oh my goshes do not happen in here for some reason. It's always when I'm out. It's like, you know, you have your best ideas when you're out for a run or walking the dog or just somewhere else. So I asked for these whiteboards. So thank you for sharing that you're not the only person who thinks about their business 24/7.
Oh yeah.
Because I need a whiteboard out there, not just in here. I've got a big one in here, but I need like notepads. They're all around the house. If I put notes in my phone, they get lost. So that doesn't work for me.
Oh, so I text myself.
Ooh.
I will send myself a text message.
Okay.
That's what I do. Because if I put in my notes, I'll forget it's there. Yeah. But if I text myself and I have that little blue notification, I'm like, oh, got to deal with it. Like, then it helps me remember it for the next day. And then what I like about that, and what you're doing and what I'm doing, all of it, is it allows us to close the loop as business owners. And when that loop is, once we're able to close the loop, we can then go back to being present where we are, because we can't always control when these amazing ideas for the visionaries are going to hit. And so you want to document them, and you can respect that process. And so once you're able to fully close that loop and say, okay, now's not the time for me to go into my office for 4 hours and work on this, even though I may want to, even though that's like what I'm inclined to do, because that's what I create. I'm a creator. It allows us to at least mentally close that loop so that way we can go back to where we were and be present.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. So all of this talk about values, balance, boundaries, how did you integrate those things in your podcast? Like as a business owner, launching this whole new beast, right? It might feel like an overwhelming additional to-do to a lot of people, especially if they're thinking, yeah, I should have a show. But it feels like this big thing. So how did you start or even change it throughout, your podcasting journey to be in alignment with these boundaries and these values that we've been talking about?
Of course. Well, the first thing I did was I decided I will never edit an episode, because that's just not me. That is not my strength. That is not where I want my strength to be. I have no desire. If it was up to me to edit any podcast episode, it would never air because it would never get done. So I decided right away, I don't even know. I wouldn't even know how to go about doing it. I don't even know the program to use. I decided from the beginning, I'm not going to try to do it myself. No. So I hire that out. I have an editor. It's actually my husband. Yay. I pay him. He's a 1099 contract employee for me. That was something that he was like, well, I could do that. I was like, are you sure? He's like, yeah. And so I pay him.
That's awesome.
And he does it, and then I'm not the one, I don't write the show notes. I decided where is it that I enjoy being, and it's in the communication piece, it's in the creation piece, and then after that, I want to be out of it. And so that allowed it to not feel like this 100-pound weight that was placed on my shoulders. It's more like a 40-pound weight because 60 pounds I have put off to other people. So really, when it comes to my podcast, I'm not even doing all of it. Like once I am done recording, I am pretty much, like I would say 99% of the way completely out of the picture, which is really wonderful because the rest of it, everything that comes after the interviewing and recording and the creation, is not my strength. So I should be out of it. So I would say for any new person who's bringing on a podcast, ask yourself, where is your strength? What part of it do you want to be involved in? What's important to you? And then get creative and find a way to have someone else take over the rest, even if it is your husband or your partner or a friend editing it for you.
Oh, I love that. I know that speaks to me. Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome.
Well, and I'm also glad to know I'm not the only one who pays my husband as a contractor. So we have that in common too.
Yes. There we go. Yeah, he loves it. It goes into his own checking account and he can spend the money however he wants. And I just ask him to buy me gifts every now and then. Like that's all I want. You do what you want with that money. I don't care. He buys things for his truck and his grill and whatever.
That's awesome.
But he likes it.
Yeah, that is so cool. So cool. Well, and I want to kind of circle back to the whole piece about really this entire abundance journey. There's a million pivots. There's a million ups and downs and changes along the way. But so many times throughout that journey, it's important that we step back and say, is this working for me? Whether it is a health issue or a mental space issue or a family thing or I built this monster and I didn't mean to, or whatever it is, is this still working for me and what should I do about it now in this phase? And I love how you've illustrated that through your journey. I know we talked about journaling and how that's a super important practice for you today. Is there any one last tip that you would share that just really helps you feel you're most abundant, or something that you do when you are feeling at that super high level?
I would say for me, it's getting out of my house and moving my body in some way. I have not always done that. And when I say moving my body, I mean taking my dog on a 2-mile walk. Just getting out and being in nature for me it helps me, number one, get out of a funk. And then number two, whenever I am feeling that abundance, it helps me with gratitude of being in that space. So that's definitely something that I honestly need to be better about. I live in Texas, so I don't do it as well as I should in the middle of the summer because it's just not safe to take my large dog who's covered in black fur out in the middle of the day. But that's something that I love to do when the weather is nice, is go on at least in the middle of the day by myself, a 1 to 2 mile walk with my dog. And I used to justify it and say, no, you have so much to do. And it's a 1 mile walk just takes 15 minutes. I can squeeze in 15 minutes and I always feel so refreshed and energized afterwards. And when things are going well, it just gives me a moment to really find gratitude for what I've created. I mean, if you think about it, it's crazy. Like, I created something that didn't exist, and now here it is, and I get to call it a job, and my in-laws are still confused about what I do. Like, it's it's incredible. It's like a magic trick. I'm a magician. I made something appear.
Oh, I love that.
And I promise it's legit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually really do help people, I swear.
Yeah.
Okay,
exactly.
So tell us where we can find all of your magic tricks online and where we can follow you.
Of course. Well, you're listening to this podcast, so I would say you love podcasts. So come check out the Inspired Budget podcast. You can grab my book, Money Made Easy, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you can buy books. And then, of course, you're always welcome to follow me over on social media at Inspired Budget or inspiredbudget.com.
Yay. And thank you so, so much, Allison. There was a ton of gold in that. I really appreciate you sharing everything.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.